So man, let's round it out with back on the Ravens. We had a situation last week actually.
Mm-hmm.
The Ravens had a tough loss. And Marlon Humphrey, a guy who's usually very outspoken and
Very.
animated and has a great personality, was a little distraught and dejected after the game, had his hoodie on and answered questions from reporters, but was very disinterested.
Yeah, for
But
6 minutes, had his head down pretty much. I think the only camera that caught him that showed his face was the Ravens camera. I think because they were on the ground or eye level with him, where basically they were able to see his face. But for a lot of other reporters, TV reporters who were in that locker room, all you saw was Marlon's head down like that. And he answered the questions. I'll give him respect for that. But he didn't have that same chippiness. He didn't have that same excitement that he usually has, because he's known for Instagram lives on a team playing after a win and stuff like that, where he's always upbeat, he's positive, he's smiling. And you didn't see that in the post-game locker room after that loss to the Lions, especially he gave up that route to Amon-Ra St. Brown at the end of the game to put it on ice. He also got called for holding on that same play. And so he just wasn't his usual self in post-game press conferences. But the very next day, this was Marlon Humphrey.
Hello, guys. We are here at the Marlon Humphrey Show, and this is live, fresh off a Monday Night Football loss. I feel like you always got to address the workplace just a tad bit. It was a rough evening at the office for myself and company. Things didn't go great. But, the good news is there's always tomorrow, hopefully, for some people. Hopefully that's me and you, if you're listening to this.
All right, we're not going to keep listening to it, but y'all see that? Got a towel on his head. What are we doing? Like, you don't even have long hair. It's yes, it was very tough at the office. Then you went out and followed that up with another loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, where y'all looked extremely horrible defensively. Then you got injured. So, Cole, what's your stance with guys having their own podcasts during season and being so focused and so dedicated towards their podcast during the season? Because right now we're filming this, but you don't have a team. So it's so speak to it from your point of view. Like, how comfortable would you feel hopping on a podcast, smiling, being your usual self after you lost the day before, and in the locker room, you were disinterested in everything going on?
Man, I think this just kind of speaks to the mood and the overall feeling that you feel after a game, like after a loss specifically. Like, you're gonna be in a more of a damper, and you're not gonna be your usual self. You're not gonna be ready to have this great conversation with this reporter about what happened. But when you come, like, even if it's not a podcast, when you come into the locker room the next day with your guys, you're gonna be your usual self. Y'all gonna chop it up, y'all gonna laugh, y'all gonna kick it, y'all gonna have fun just like y'all do. Right. And we're gonna say, hey, we're gonna get things right. We're gonna right the ship for this week. So I don't think it's necessarily a problem for him to hop on his podcast and act the way he acted, because you're not gonna live in that feeling of, we lost this game and I feel some type of way the entire week. You're gonna say, okay, it's time to turn over a new leaf and let's get better this week. As far as podcasts and having them during the season, I kind of feel like that's a reason why we started this podcast just now. Like, me being out of football, like, I honestly didn't feel extremely comfortable doing a podcast during the season, just because sometimes it can get dicey with some of the things you say and who you're commenting on, and people are going to turn that around and look at your play and how are you commenting on this and that when you're not performing and you're not showing up. So it's definitely bait for people to spew some negativity at you, but I don't necessarily see it as a problem. When you're confident in who you are and what you're doing and your work ethic and what you're putting into it, go ahead and have your podcast and say what you got to say. But at the same time, no, there's going to be some criticism coming when you're not performing on the field.
I just think having a podcast when you're in season, like granted, if you sign with a team, I want you to keep this podcast going because we got content to dish out. You feel me? But I also think that it opens up Pandora's box. And I think you saw that a little bit with Michael Parsons and his podcast when he was with the Dallas Cowboys, calling out his team and things like that. And I think Randy Gregory came out and called him out. It was like, if you were less focused on his podcast and you were more focused on wins and losses, then maybe this team will be doing better. So I think it just can cause some unwanted tension in the locker room. But I also think that as an athlete, it's important for you guys to control your name, image, and likeness. I think, you guys always talk about the media misconstruing your words, cutting out words, only running certain sound bites. Like, I think it's very important for you guys to have a platform. And I think when I was leaving St. Louis in 2020 or something like that, 2021, we got asked to make a prediction about what we think about the sports world in the next 10 years. And I said, I think local journalists, sports journalist jobs will be in jeopardy. I said, because more than ever now, players are controlling their own narratives. Players have their own platforms. Players are using their own platforms to get out what they have to say. Instead of saying, like you say, 5 to 10 minutes after a game, when I'm flustered, emotions are still high, let me go on my podcast and tell you what I was thinking. Let me go spit my point of view. So I think it's important. And I think it's good because it's like it gives you a chance to elaborate and really spit your truth. But I also don't like, it's a downside to that. I don't think that there's anyone to hold these players on their podcast accountable. Like they can go on there and just say how they feel. Oh, what went this? Well, without anybody checking them and being like, hold up now, hold up. What you mean on this play? Like it looked like this. So I think there's double-edged sword to it. But I get, Marlon doing that podcast. There was a lot of scrutiny on social media from Ravens fans after that. Like you doing this and y'all just lost. You got torched. You gave up the game winning first down, like, and got a holding penalty. And here you are the next day. I saw a lot of tweets like, read the room, Marlon, read the room. And I guess people trying to say like basically he shouldn't podcast because he lost. And I guess I don't know how to feel about
I think it's more respectable to still hop on your podcast after a loss. Like you can't just disappear. Like we need to hear what's up, man. What's going on with y'all team right now? Like y'all not performing like we used to. Y'all performing and up to the standard. So if you go and duck and hide and you say, "All right, man, look, we lost this week. We lost last week. I'm done with the podcast." You're gonna look even worse, bro. So you gotta hop on the podcast. You gotta bring your energy. You gotta say what's going on, and you gotta control your narrative, like you said, because even with the after the post game interviews, with the perspective of he had his head down, his hoodie on. I went and watched the Ravens perspective when it showed his face, and those two different perspectives tell way different stories.
They do.
So
they do.
You have to hop on and control your own narrative, and I respect you doing it more after a loss.
I can see that. Look, I'm gonna agree with you because I'm praying that you get picked up soon, and I'm gonna tell you, you got to keep doing.
We getting on.
Yeah, I'm about to say, yeah.
I'm in a groove now, my boy.
I was about to say no exception, Cole. Off day Tuesday, we on the podcast. Wednesday after practice, we on the podcast, Cole. So I'm with it. I understand why athletes do it, and as you said, this is why we created this podcast to find that common ground and kind of talk about where journalists and athletes are coming from. So the way that you explained it certainly made sense. Like after a loss, you got to confront the haters and all the naysayers, and that's exactly what he was doing, although they didn't like that he was in a towel or the way that it is. But hey, it is what it is. To each his own. You do what you got to do. He's comfortable in his own body. So that's that was a good recap for week 4, man. Exciting football, a lot of records that we didn't predict, a lot of things going on in the league. Malik Neighbors tore his ACL. Feel bad for him, man. One of the premier receivers in the game. Hopefully he bounces back next year, extremely healthy. I'm sure we'll have some talking points about turf and grass in the near future because that's a big storyline right now. But we'll say that for another week. But, I think, Cole, that's a good spot to end it. I think we recapped a lot of the media and athlete drama from week 4.
Yes, sir, man. And it's still going to keep coming. I already know this. It's no end in sight. But I love it, man. We getting down to the nitty gritty. We really getting down to what matters. and the truth of it all, man. So
Absolutely.
this is very important, brother. We gotta keep going. I ain't stopping once I get signed. I ain't stopping.
All right, that's good, because I'm gonna be calling you just like you be calling me. Like, Cole, we need them shorts, we need them teasers, and I need a graphic. I don't care if you gotta go to work. You better find a time after special teams meet.
I might have to hire somebody for all that. I gotta hire somebody for that.
You'll have some money to do that then. So we'll figure it out when we get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, man. Well, thank y'all so much for joining us again. Please like, subscribe, and comment, man. We're gonna keep these coming for y'all because it's important. It's important.
And make sure y'all set that notification on. Like when you subscribe, you like, turn that notification on so you can know when we drop new content, so you can see our latest videos, because we need y'all to watch. And if you're not watching, watch, share it to a friend, tell your grandma, tell your grandma, your grandfather, your mama, your daddy, your auntie, your cousin, your uncle, your aunt, everybody. Tell everybody to tell a friend, because we got some good stuff coming out and we go keep dishing it to y'all. So y'all just stay tuned.
Let's go, baby. Well said.
All right. See y'all later.